This is my pink pillow of happiness and joy. Keeps me, it's a gift from my wife. How is everyone today? I hadn't planned on this, but in the tradition that I practice, there's a practice called offering merit. When you do worthwhile things, and we all try to do worthwhile things. I should have taken my sandals off first. We all try to do worthwhile things. You acquire merit. You acquire benefit from your good acts. The first paramita in Buddhism, there's 6, is generosity. And so one of the practices is to offer merit, and offer merit for people that are ill, offer merit for people that have died, offer merit for whatever. So today happens to be September 11th, and I hadn't thought about it much, but I'd like to offer merit to the family and friends and the city and the state and the nation for that great tragedy. So you feel free to join me. I'm offering merit to the benefit of all beings, most especially today, for those that lost their lives on September 11th, 2001 in New York City. May their families receive blessings and healing. The power of delusion is fierce. May it be destroyed. May all beings be blessed. So today, the title of my talk is Silence, which is really kind of silly. I'm going to talk about silence now. But that happens a lot in Buddhism, you know. I mean, you're always ending up with a duality, and then you try to pick one side or the other. And it's sort of like going to the bank and saying, I want a roll of quarters, but I only want the heads. There's tails with heads and on coins, and duality is something that we have to struggle with getting clear. And so I'm going to read again what I shared. Geographic lesson. The San Bernardino Mountains are in California, not Colorado. It was a moving experience for me at that moment. I didn't realize I was in Colorado. You did a great job, by the way, thank you. Dogen Zenji, Ihai Dogen, was the man who brought the monk, the priest, who brought Zen Chan, which is the Chinese practice, to Japan in the 13th century. And so he's kind of the core of the very beginning of Zen in Japan 900 years ago. And he has a book. Well, he gave talks and they were transcribed. And there really wasn't much else to do in the rainy season, so the talks went on for a long time. And so there's 94 or 96 chapters in the Shobo Genzo, which is referred to as the treasury of the true Dharma Eye, just to give you a little history. In that, the 3rd chapter is called the Genko Koan, and it's a letter that he wrote. Most of the chapters, by the way, the book's 1,100 pages. So it's going to take a lifetime to really get to the bottom of it. It's thick and deep. But at any rate, the word Genko Koan can be translated, like most words can, in a multitude of ways. Actualizing the fundamental point was one way to translate it. Another translation that I really like is the matter at hand, which is the now moment. So he says, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be verified by all beings. To be verified by all things, no, pardon me, verified by all things, including beings. To be verified by all things is to let the body and mind of the self and the body and the mind of others drop off. There's a trace, this wasn't in the quote before, there's a trace of realization that cannot be grasped. We endlessly express this ungraspable trace of realization. So we misunderstand and we are often confused, and we live in a culture, like all people live in some kind of a culture, that reinforces separation. My body, your body, my attitude, your attitude. You're over there, I'm over here. So that's a result of our sensory apparatus, our physical form, and the reality we live in. But we've created with eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, an idea that we're separate. And that's not the truth. We're not at all. We're certainly individuals, physically. But in a way, you could say there's only one thing going on here in the now moment, because that's all that exists. In the now moment, there's only one thing going on. And it includes everything. So I started, because I'm supposed to talk about my path and how I started with all that. I heard that 50 years ago and went, what? What on earth? But as a boy, I had a terrible disease. I at 13, 12 or 13, something like that. I got mononucleosis, and I got an extremely severe case. I was out of school for 6 weeks. And at one point, I had a fever in excess of 104 degrees for like 4 or 5 days. I mean, I was delirious. I thought I was dying, and may well have been. And I had an experience, we call it now a near-death experience. I don't know whether it was a dream, whether it was hallucination, whether it was a near-death experience, but I met the angel of death in this experience. And he said, step off the edge. And I went, not this boy, not now. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in a suburb, but we were tough. We were the sons of the warriors that won Second World War. So, when we fought, we didn't roll around on the ground and pull each other's hair and cry. We fought. And so I wasn't taking that one. And then I said, you take me, well, there'll be scratches in these rocks. I ain't going. Well, and I was pretty, I used a lot of street language with him. That doesn't bear repeating, but you get the idea. I was not going. And he said to me, well, you don't have to be rude, because I was really rude. He said, everything's changed. He said, everything's changed. And this is you don't have to stay, because things are different now because of your illness. So this is your opportunity. It's a window of opportunity. You can leave free and start again. No way. I'm here now. And I ain't going. So it was a strange experience, a window of opportunity to leave. And it was when I first started to realize that the absolute creator of all things is also ruled by the law of probabilities. And apparently, even he was surprised. So things were different. And I didn't know quite what to make of it. And it was hard. It was very, very hard. He was right. He said, it's going to be hard. You don't have to stay. It's going to be really hard. And I went, bring it. And so they did. And it changed my personality. A lot of you, if you've studied psychology, if a child at the age of 12, 13, 14 has a dramatic health issue like that, it alters the personality because our separate self, our ego, because that's forming at that period. And so I was popular in school. I was a leader. I was the treasurer of the booster club. I was the vice president of the student council. I knew everyone in my junior high by name, and very social. And I just became a recluse. I didn't want to be with people. I didn't want to be in crowds. I still don't feel real comfortable in big crowds, like Disneyland. No. The airport. No. But it turned me around in a different direction. Later, I got what I call memos, a memo from headquarters. Since you've declined this opportunity, this window of opportunity, you have 3 more opportunities coming in your life at 56, 84, and 92. Well, I was 13. I mean, 56 was like centuries away, you know. And so I went on and I got into Hinduism. I got into yoga. I bought a little book for 35 cents. New books used to cost 35 cents for cheap paperbacks on yoga, hatha yoga. And he talked about all the different yogas, Raja yoga and karma yoga, which is work, bhakti yoga, which is devotion, and meditation, and in particular pranayama, which is a breathing practice where you control and alter your breath. And so I got into it, and I was doing yoga, and I was real flexible, and I got into doing all of that. And I started doing, and in the teaching, he said, now, you shouldn't do this without the guidance of a teacher, but this is how you do it. you know, I mean, come on, I'm 13, right? I can read. So I did it. Well, I had an extraordinarily powerful spiritual experience. And that made me question deeper. I was a very devout Christian. And at the period, so we're talking like 1958, a long time ago. And the beatniks and Zen was being talked about, and the Dharma beatniks and the Dharma bums. A lot of confusion about what that was, distortions. But I got curious. I asked my priest about meditation, and he said, well, I sit in the chapel and I think beautiful thoughts. No, that wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I knew there was something else. Life went on, and I just got into Zen, Buddhism, curiosity, reading books, and Alan Watts and all of that, and philosophers, speculators. And I found a Zen temple. I lived in LA at the time. And by that point, I was in my early 20s, I think. And so I went to this temple one day and we sat, Zazen. It was I didn't know it. It was a Rinzai temple. And it was really nice. I really liked it. In Rinzai, you sit, in Soto Zen, you sit facing the wall, and in Rinzai, you sit facing out, the other practitioners, and your eyes are cast down. You're not looking at people, you know. And I watched the sun. They had terracotta tiles in the temple. Go move all afternoon. And at the end, we had, not a sister, I can't remember the Japanese word, meeting with the master. And this guy was from Japan. He was the last Zen master that was transmitted prior to the beginning of World War II. He came here in the 60s. People brought him from LA. And so I hope there's this ritual you go through, you know, you hear a bell and then you go to the door and you bow, and then you open the door and then you bow again, and then you go in and close the door and you bow again. And then you go to the master and you sit in front of him and you bow, and then he bows. I opened the door and I knew it was a room in the building. It was a big building in LA. actually a former mansion. And there was this sea of tatami mat. That was all there was. And this rice paper screen over in the window with a real low black mahogany table and a vase with a dead stick. It was so cool. I mean, it was really neat, really beautiful. And there's this little guy sitting over in the corner. And he looked like Yoda, you know, I mean, he was just, I didn't know what Yoda was then, but so I walked over, I did the bowing and I did all of that. We were in line waiting our turn. And I went over and I sat down. And his English was terrible, but much better than my Japanese, which is non-existent. He said, "What's your Buddha nature?" I said, "What?" He said, "What's your Buddha nature?" I don't, what's my Buddha nature? I don't know. What's your Buddha nature? Are you deaf? I said, "No, I didn't have the temerity to, I didn't have any courage to tell him his English was terrible." He said, "You a student?" I didn't understand. "Yes, a student, yes." "You have a car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "All you Americans have cars." I don't understand. All of a sudden, he picks up this little shillelagh. I can't remember the Japanese word. And he goes, and ticks the end of my nose. And he goes, "What's your Buddha nature now?" So, trying to stay within the bounds of decorum, I bowed, I got up, I ran out the room, I got to the door, I bowed, I opened the door, I turned around and closed the door, and I bowed again and fled. I went to my shoes, right? Because you don't wear shoes. I'm looking for my shoes. And there's this little monk, you know, skinny guy in robes, and I'm going. And he goes, "What happened in there? What happened in there? What happened in there?" And I said, "That man's insane." So I got in a 1953 Buick and drove away, driving. And I've been trying to figure out what my Buddha nature is ever since. I was an outdoor salesman. I worked on straight commission practically my entire life, never made a paycheck. It was what I sold. And I did an estimate on it one time. I think I've driven something in the vicinity of 3 million miles. And my Buddha nature's been there the whole time, you know. It's always right where you are. So anyway, I ended up getting transferred to Eugene, Oregon in 73, and there happened to be a temple there with Zen monks who were not quite as crazy. They were Soto Zen, and they were very nice. Husband and a wife. They had to leave the practice because their temple, because they couldn't make it work. They got married. She immediately had twins. They had 2 kids, and they're beggars, right? They're monks. Oh, so they had to go back into lay life. And so there I was in Fresno, California. There wasn't a temple within 100 miles. And I just kept practicing. And I did it all wrong because the instructions were, what am I supposed to do? Just sit. Okay. And while I'm just sitting, you know, took me a long time to sort that out. And they were raw, new priests, right? They were accustomed to being in a monastic environment that's drenched in teaching and Dharma with master teachers, and conversations and interactions and the explanations sort of unfold. I had no explanation. So I did it wrong for decades. And I kept giving up because it was horrible. And then actually here in Franklin, I just found out the other day we're Maconians. I didn't know that. Isn't that? I think that's. I thought I was a Maconite, but no, I'm a Maconian. Us Maconians in Macon County here. My wife and I'm known at the farmer's market, I was known as the egg man. I had eggs. I sold eggs. And my wife and I raised chickens and did eggs. And it's a great way to make money in the summer, and then you have to feed them all winter and they don't lay. So it's it's really tough. It's really tough. Anyway, I hesitate to tell you this, but when COVID struck, everyone was panicked. I didn't panic. I plowed up 3,500 feet in our pasture and started planting seeds. And I went and got chickens and I raised them from chicks for meat birds. And we were processing the meat birds at one point. And we hadn't done it in 10 years. And we put 25 chickens in the freezer. Oh, actually more than that. We did close to 50. Anyway, we were trying to get back. It had been 10 years since we'd done it. And there's a very critical point when you're processing meat so that it doesn't get damaged or destroyed. And after all, this animal has lived to give you food, right? And so you don't want to waste it. You want to appreciate it. And so there was one point in removing the bottom where it's extremely delicate and you have to have a scalpel type knife. And my wife wouldn't shut up. Now, she never talks, but all of a sudden, she was just full of ideas. And I'm trying to, and I said, honey, please, I want you to get away from me. I said, go up on the porch. Don't go far, but go up on the porch, get yourself a cup of coffee or lemonade, and please don't say anything. I need you close because I might need your help. But I need to concentrate. I need to focus. And so I did. Eyes, hands, work. And I went, oh. And so I started to time myself, and I got really good at it and really fast. Eyes, hands, work. Self went away. No self. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to verify all things. And so I always thought that I had wasted my life, my practice, because I couldn't do it right. No one had ever really explained it to me. I had been doing the exact right thing for 49 years. Eyes, hands, work. Self goes away. So my practice, I sit on this little stool I made because I can't sit on the zafu I made 50 years ago anymore without my knees being up in my ears. You know, it's just, I'm old, I'm 77, so just not flexible. So, and I had this wonderful recognition that I hadn't wasted a minute. Everyday life and what you do repeatedly. It's not big. It's not huge. It's not about your ego. It's not about, oh, look at me, I'm so cool. It isn't any of that. It's being verified by all things. To be verified by all things is to let the body and mind of the self and the body and mind of others drop off. How am I doing on time? I can't see well.
You're good.
I'm perfect. I love that. I love it when somebody says, I'll go on. So I realized when I did manual labor, it was working Zen. I would go to the Zen center and we would have Silent Sunday, right? We started at 6 with morning service. We chanted. We chanted the Heart Sutra and the Scripture of Great Wisdom and all those things. And we did Zazen, and then we chanted, and we did another sitting, and then there was a work period, and then there was a maybe something light for breakfast, and then there was a work period, clean up, and then there was more sitting and maybe a talk, and then a work period and on throughout the day. It's like a monastery. That's what they did, and what they still do. And I love the work periods. I love the work periods because I didn't just sit there, you know, I was engaged with life, activity, motion, something. And I had been doing that every time I had ordinary tasks my whole life, my whole life. And it's not about getting something. It's not about grasping something. It's not about attaining something. It's about expressing something out of the center. When you go to Japan and you talk to someone and you say, where's your mind? Heart, mind. Emotions are a form of thought as well as discursive thought. And so there is a trace of realization that cannot be grasped. We endlessly express this ungraspable trace of realization. I've learned more probably in the last 3 or 4 years than I've learned in my previous life. I have a teacher in California, Reverend Vivian. My wife calls her Aunt Vivian. We support her diligently. She's creating a hermitage, still water flowing hermitage. She's a monk from Shasta Abbey, was transmitted by Reverend Master Jiu, I believe, and before she passed away. And met her on Zoom when I was with another group on Zoom. Zoom is amazing. It's just so great. You can go anywhere now. You know, people used to walk in China hundreds of miles, thousands of miles through jungles and tigers and bandits and everything to get to the teacher, to get to the Dharma. I just go on my computer and go, I'm in California. I'm in Tallahassee at the Tallahassee Chan Center, another one of my teachers, Gao Gu. He's a Chan master, a layman, professor of Buddhist studies at Florida State. And he was a monk for 20 or 30 years. He was his master's attendant for 9 years. He was a translator. He translates all kinds of things. He said, you know, only about less than 2% of all the books on Buddhism in China have been translated into English. We have no idea of the depth. You know, this is the thing outside of words and language. Boy, do they have words and language to talk about the thing that's outside of words and language. I went to a session in December, 7-day at the Chan Center. And I'm pretty old. It was tough. It was really tough. But 16 and a half hours of meditation every day, sitting, moving, working, practicing, and all kinds of techniques. I've learned all kinds of different techniques to use, methods to use in meditation. And Chan halls are different than Zen halls. And so Zen halls, 3 people, 50 people, 3,000 people, doesn't matter. In Chan halls, there's people sitting. There's people walking. Normal walk, slow walk, walking meditation. Japanese call it kinhin. There's people doing prostrations. If you're young, you have to do, I don't know, 500 prostrations a day. If you're old, you can get to do 10, but you have to do them in slow motion, full prostration. That is, you're standing, you kneel, you bow. And stand back up, only much slower than that. And by the end of the session, it was like a three-ring circus. I mean, there were people prostrating, there were people walking, there were people meditating. Gaogu's walking around with what he calls an incense stick, a stick. Okay, you don't want to get wet, and so used it to keep time. And subsequent to that, last spring, he started a class, 16-week class from Indian Buddhism to Chinese Chan, and it traced kind of like in a jet at 5,000 feet going from southern India up into the heart of China and covering 1,000 years of Buddhism. Really enlightening, really enlightening. We had 8 lectures and 8 meditation periods. He taught different techniques. So my favorite is the Platform Sutra, Hui Nin. People around here call him Hu Ning. It's Hui Nin. The 6th patriarch of Chan. And if you have the book, I recommend, now there's good translations and bad translations, but I recommend you get the book, the Platform Sutra, and focus on chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. It's all his sermons. 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. Mind-boggling. His teaching was based on the Diamond Sutra. And the fundamental principle is no thought, no form, non-abiding. No thought, no form, non-abiding. No form in the midst of form. No thought in the midst of thought. Non-attachment, non-abiding. And so that's my practice, non-abiding mind arising. But I do other things as well. But the point is to let the mind quiet, to let the heart quiet, to let the world quiet around you, and let go, not grasp. Would anyone like to join me with that for a minute? Do we have a minute? Okay. Do you have a bell to ring? John, you're done? Okay. Palms together. Relax your body, starting at your scalp, flowing down your face, particularly your eyes and the point between your eyebrows. Feel them. Get into the body. Let go of everything else. Relax your cheeks and jawline. I'm going very fast. You should do this slower. Down the back of your neck, let everything go. Relax your shoulders. Raise them and release them. Relax all your joints in your shoulders and your elbows, the muscles and tendons. Relax it all. Coming back up to the middle of your forehead. Move down, feeling your body to your heart. Relax your chest. Feel your weight drop down into your hips, into your lower abdomen. Feel your connection to earth. Breathe naturally. Follow the breath. and let yourself center. Sit up nice and straight, balanced, connected to earth, quiet. If a thought pops into your mind, just don't hook into it. Let it pass. Allow a sense of contentment to arise. Right now, everything is perfectly okay. Let a little smile, like you've seen Buddha statues where he's got a little smile. Put a little smile on the corner of your lips and let that contentment arise in your heart. And if the discursive mind comes up with a thought, just let it go, unhook. Don't hook into it. Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's good to be good. Does anyone have any questions for me?